starting to enter a minute early. Hello, everybody. So hi, I can see that you guys are starting to enter the meeting space. Welcome. I am going to go ahead and share my screen, and I am going to ask those of you who are all logged in to do me a favor and let me know, use the chat and just give us hey, yeah, we can hear you, we can see you, we can see your screen. That would be really helpful. Also to our panelists, you guys, I have something that I'm putting in the chat before I get underway. If any of you are still within earshot and can copy and repaste it in sort of in the middle so folks have access to the information I'm going to post, that'd be really helpful. Okay. You can see it just because people can't see what I've posted if they enter after I've posted. You can see it here. Outstanding. Thank you, guys. Thumbs up. Good on screen and sound. All right. Thank you guys so much. I'm grateful to see your feedback there. You never know if you're just projecting into the ether. So, folks, we are going to get started here momentarily. We're going to give a few minutes for people to enter the meeting space. But I have a couple of recommendations in the meantime. We are going to be here together for a good hour. You've made the commitment to be here, and I hope that you'll find a way to let go of distractions and give it up for what's really going to be an important and I hope impactful hour. I can stick around for a little bit after the fact to answer some questions for you. I find it really difficult to answer questions while I'm presenting, so if you would, hold your questions, see if I've answered them by the end of the presentation, jot them down, and we'll try to address as much as we can at the end. Because we are going to be here together for an hour, I recommend that you grab yourself a beverage of choice, whatever that might be for you at this hour, where you are, and maybe a pad of paper and a pen. As I mentioned, we're going to cover quite a bit of ground, and you may want to jot some notes down. Okay. With that all being said, doing on time, it's 2 minutes after. Okay, we're almost ready to go with our panelists to introduce themselves. We still have folks entering the meeting space, so give one more bit of time here. Okay. Okay. So, hey folks, we are so pleased to have with us this evening 3 of our partner schools. So I welcome all of you. This is a Central Time Zone session. So we have with us representatives from each of your schools, and I want to go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Malika Lindsay, why don't you kick us off from Jackson Prep?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Prep families. You all know me. I'm Malika Lindsay. I'm your Director of College Counseling. Excited that you decided to join this webinar this evening. I spent earlier today at lunch telling a bunch of other counselors how worthwhile Smart Track is in supporting families and providing them with good, honest information about college funding, not just financial aid, but really, everyone has to pay for college since everyone's going to college. So Smart Track does a really good service and takes me out of the driving seat in terms of having to be an expert in one more thing. So we're very, very appreciative of Smart Track and the work that Cindy and her team do.
Thank you for that, Malika. Appreciate that so much. Kristen Kaczynski, why don't you hop in next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Kaczynski, Director of College Counseling at North Shore Country Day School in Winnetka, Illinois. Welcome to all the North Shore families as well. And I just have to echo what Malika said as well. Cindy takes an incredibly complex topic and simplifies it to help everyone kind of understand it a lot better. I've had the privilege of hearing her present a couple of times now, and I know that each and every one of you, whether you're thinking about paying for college, whether you're thinking about the need-based financial aid process or even merit scholarships, we'll take something out of this presentation. So, Cindy, thank you so much for having us.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for logging in, Kristen. And then Josh Hudley from Audi.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Audi families. My name is Joshua Hudley, and I'm the co-director of college counseling at Audi International School. And echoing what's already been said, we're part of this program because Smart Track, I think the program and the information that they present is so important. And this is such an important topic for students and for families with the rising cost of college education in this country. And, you can look at different prices in a sticker shock. I think that the folks at Smart Track really do a good job, I think, of breaking this down and really demystifying in many ways some of the questions or concerns that parents might have as they begin to think about the process of, hey, wait a minute, my kid's going to be going to college in a few years. How are we going to pay for this? So very valuable information. We've been privileged to be working with Smart Track for the last couple of years. Cindy has a great presentation for you all this evening, and so highly encourage you to take notes and be sure to ask questions at the end. Thanks for joining us.
Thank all of you so much. You guys can take yourselves out of the spotlight here, and I'll go ahead and get started, but thank you again. So before I get underway, I am going to put something here in the chat before I get too preoccupied to do it. So folks, you will notice that I put something in the chat. There are links for each of your schools. I want you to please just take a minute, click on it so that you have that web page open for the end of the session. By the end of the session, you'll know what you're supposed to do with that link. But in the meantime, I want you to know that it's there. And I want you to have that information. Okay. All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Cindy Menegaz. I am the National Program Director at Smart Track College Funding. I am also the mom of identical twin boys who have since graduated from college, but when they were between 9th and 10th grade, we attended a college funding workshop similar to what you're going to see tonight, and it changed the game for us. It really put us on a path to understanding what we could afford, what resources we would draw upon, what our kids' options were. And it alleviated the stress in our household so considerably that I became a huge proponent of this whole concept of college funding planning, and so much so that I came to work for the company. So it is my distinct pleasure to share the same information with you in the hopes that it will put you as well on the right path to figuring out your best options for how to cover your college costs. Now, we talk tonight about college funding planning. What does that mean? We'll get into it. But I just want to give you the big picture about why it's so important to plan ahead for how you're going to cover your college costs for all the kids in your family. What happens when you look ahead is that it helps you maximize your eligibility for grants, scholarships, financial aid, whether they're based on your family's financial need or your child's merits. And don't worry, we'll define those terms as we get going. What happens when you learn how to leverage what you bring to the table with what's available from the government and the colleges themselves is that it reduces how much money you have to borrow. And that is a huge cost savings for you. Now, I wish I could tell all of you, okay, go out and do A, B, and C, and you're going to be good. When in reality, it is not one size fits all. This is a very individualized process. What's important for you is that you begin to understand what's going on in your own family's financial profile so that you can make educated decisions about the health and financial well-being of your own family. Bottom line, if you plan ahead, you're going to maximize your aid and minimize your debt. That's huge. All right, so Smart Track College Funding, who are we? This is a company that has been around for some 23 years. We have a nationwide team of professional, licensed college funding experts, as well as a whole platform of online tools and resources designed to help parents through this whole process. We've worked with some 400,000 families to help them better, more affordably pay for college. Now, you can hire a professional college funding planner anywhere across the United States. They will typically charge in the several thousands of dollars for their services. Because of our size and our technology and the relationships that we have, it's really allowed us to level the playing field and make these kinds of resources and education far more affordable and accessible. And that's something we're very, very proud of. Now, the High School Initiative is the program that brings us to all of you this evening. This is a free program for your schools and for parents designed to help support your college counselors and educate you, parents, on what your role is in the college planning process, particularly around the subject of paying for it, right? The funding piece. If I asked any of you right now, all right, so how do you plan to cover your college costs? What can you afford? What are you going to draw on? Do you have enough for all your kids, etc.? Many of you might say, well, we've been saving for college. We have a pool of money, and that's what we have. Others of you might not have a clue. You're flying by the seat of your pants right now, and that's okay. The point is that right now is when you need to begin thinking strategically about how you are going to cover these costs. So to that end, this program, the High School Initiative, provides all of you with a complimentary college funding evaluation that'll give you the opportunity to have a college funding expert review your current state, really stress test where you are and see if there are any weak spots, if you're in good shape, whatever is going on with you. Knowledge is power, and this is the first step to really figuring this thing out. On top of that, you have access to valuable resources on our platform to kind of help educate you further on this whole subject. So I encourage you to take advantage of those opportunities. There's no cost, there's no obligation, there's no strings attached, nothing like that. So we'll talk more about that. I'm not here to sell you anything. Of course, I don't want to leave you hanging. Some of you may find that you want to work with a professional to develop your college funding plans. And if you opt to work with us, you will receive steeply discounted rates on our retail. We're talking under $500 for comprehensive college funding planning. So that's something that is available to you. You can just kind of put that in your back pocket. Okay, so what we have learned over so many years in this space is that families all have the same primary concerns, regardless of their financial circumstances. You want to know, how do we pay for college? How do we use our income and our assets to cover the considerable cost of educating all our kids? How do we reduce those costs? How do you shave tens of thousands of dollars off the cost of a college education? Stretch your money, make it go further. And how do you balance these seemingly competitive goals of wanting to give your kid every opportunity, at the same time knowing that you're going to have to retire one day, right? So if you're out there and you're nodding your head, yeah, this is stuff I'm concerned about, you are in the right place. Now, I'm sure it comes as no surprise to anyone that where your child ultimately attends college may very well be influenced by the cost. What you may not know is that for many middle-income and upper-middle-income families, they will overpay for college by an average of $22,000 per student per year. The reasons are several. For one is, folks assume that the financial aid system is designed for lower income families, and so therefore it doesn't apply to them, and they don't engage in the process at all. That can be a very costly assumption because, in fact, the financial aid system is actually much larger and more inclusive than I think most families realize. Now, even if you do go ahead and submit a financial aid application when the time comes, when your children are applying for college, if you have not taken the months and years before that to organize your financial life as favorably as possible, you may not be assessed as favorably within that system. The best analogy I can give you would be your tax return. Would you submit your tax return without taking every legitimate deduction that you had coming to you? No, of course not. No one wants to pay more in taxes than they're obligated to, right? So the same is true here. You just want to set yourself up so that you're assessed as favorably as you can. Now, some folks will look at the retail price of a college or university and tell their child, forget it, you're not applying there, it's too expensive. And in doing so, you may be cutting yourself off from a really great fit school that might be really generous with your family and your student and make it a lot more affordable for you than you might have imagined based on the retail price. So you want to make sure that you're balancing out your lists with schools that are likely to be generous based on your family circumstances and their historical generosity. Now, another reason folks will miss out on money is that they make errors on aid applications when the time comes. And here, I don't mean computational errors necessarily, but more like including information that they're not asking you for, or missing deadlines, right? You don't want to give a reason to the government or the schools to deny you aid you might otherwise be eligible for. And then lastly, how you pay for college will absolutely impact how much you pay for college. So it's critical that you learn your best options for covering your college costs. Sometimes where we pull our money from and how we cover our costs can end up inadvertently costing us sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. So you really want to make sure that you're going to pay for college as efficiently, as affordably, as tax advantagedly as you can. All right, so I mentioned here middle income and upper middle income families, and there's a reason for that. These are folks that are traditionally squeezed in these calculations. These are families who, based on their income or their assets, assume they're not going to see much in the way of need-based financial aid, but at the same time, they are going to find challenging paying full price at any college their child might want to attend. It's a pretty big group. We're talking about folks with household incomes ranging from $80,000 to $300,000 a year. Perhaps you've got some equity in your home from, I would say, about $300,000 or more. If you have some retirement assets or some non-retirement assets, as you see on my screen here, if you fall into one or more of these categories, you may very well be poised to overpay for college. These are the folks we really want to support, and the kind of work that we do, college funding planning, can really make a difference here. Now, of course, we have other sides of this equation, right? Lower income families, you're going to qualify for need-based financial aid. You want to make sure and maximize that by A, including good fit, generous schools that have money to give on your list, and B, make sure you're not making errors on those aid applications so you get everything that you're qualified for. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you have more affluent families, and you know what? You will be expected to pay for college. You'll have the means to do so. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you want to pay full price just because you can. If you want to defray some costs, certainly merit aid is something you want to try to maximize. I'll explain more of that as the evening progresses. But just a quick aside here, we're talking about college funding planning, and I just want to make it clear where that's helpful and where it's not really helpful to you. For those folks in the middle, in that middle and upper middle income range between $80,000 and $300,000 a year, if you have assets that are not 529s, not retirement assets, ranging between about $100,000 and $350,000, and if you own property and have some equity, then this kind of service may actually be really helpful for you and make sure that you're not overpaying for college. On those other sides, if you're lower income without property or significant assets, then you don't have the issues that will keep you from getting that aid. So college funding planning doesn't really help you. On the other side, if you're that more affluent family with incomes over $300, $350, $400 or more $1,000 with those assets, you know what? You're going to be in good shape, and how you position yourself isn't going to make a tremendous difference because you will be expected to pay, right? All right, so I just wanted to kind of clear that up and hope that that makes sense for all of you. Let's keep moving. Cost of attendance. So COA is defined as everything you will spend for 1 year of college for one student. And it includes tuition, of course, but everything else as well, right? Room and board, assuming your child lives in a dorm or off campus, as a meal plan, books, transportation, fees, it's all in. So how much is it? Well, of course, every state across the country has a public university system. If you attend one where you are a resident, you'll be looking at paying in-state costs. These are typically running between about $20,000 and $40,000 in cost of attendance per year. Of course, there are great public universities outside of the state in which you reside that your child might be interested in. As an out-of-state resident, you're looking at between about $40,000 and $70,000 a year. And of course, there are private colleges and universities where it doesn't matter whether you live in or out of the state in which it's located. There is one retail price for everyone. Hopefully, you won't pay full retail, right? Private universities run between about mid-$50,000 range to as much or more now than $80,000 a year. There are some now that are closer to $90,000. So you have to figure that a 4-year undergraduate education is going to run you anywhere from about $80,000 to $100,000 on the lower end to as much or more than $320,000. That's per child. So that's sizable, and it really begs the question, how are we supposed to pay for this? How do we pay our share, right? Well, the first place we're always going to look is income and savings. All of the cash flow coming into your household, however derived, whether that's 1099 or W-2 or dividends, etc. Maybe you've been saving for college in a particular kind of savings account, college savings account. There are, by the way, several different varieties of college savings account, and they are not all assessed the same way within this system. Then, of course, you have things like checking, savings, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, money market accounts, other investments, CDs, etc. So you will look to these resources and determine how much you can readily divert from that toward your college costs each year you have a child enrolled. Now, if there is a gap between what you can readily afford and the cost of attendance, what do you do then? Well, if you're like most people, you assume that you're just going to have to borrow the money, right? Isn't that how people pay for college? They borrow the money? So let's talk about it just for a minute here. So the federal government has 2 lending programs for undergraduate education. The first is direct to your student. Your student can borrow a limited amount of money toward their undergraduate education each year. Parents, you got it. You're the other lending program from the federal government. They will loan parents money to send their kids to college. These loans tend to have the best interest rates and the best deal out there in undergraduate lending. There is also, of course, the private sector. They're quite happy to loan you money. It tends to be a little more flexible in their terms, but the interest rates tend to be higher. Now, here is the thing about borrowing money for college. It can be an important part of any family's strategy. It can be the bridge that gets you where you need to go. However, it should never be your first strategy, your first go-to place. No, you want to use it as a last chance. The last ditch place you want to go to pay for college is borrowing money. Because even though it might begin as a relatively affordable scenario, it snowballs very quickly and becomes very, very expensive very fast. This is why we want you to learn to leverage what you do have with what's available from those resources like the government and the schools so that you shrink how much you have to borrow. You want to shrink that gap. Okay, let's move on. Now, besides borrowing from the federal government and the banks and credit unions out there, there are other ways to borrow. What about your own retirement accounts? Is it a good idea to withdraw from retirement to help you pay for college? Well, there are some downsides, right? Penalties, fees, taxes that you might incur, right? And the banks will loan you money to send your kids to college, but they won't loan you money to retire on. So you don't want to wake up with a retirement problem. And then lastly, remember I said how you pay for college will affect how much you pay for college? This is a really good example of that. So let's say that you withdraw some money from retirement to help cover your child's first year in college. Well, the second year, you have to resubmit your financial aid application. When you do that, they are going to assess the money you took out of your retirement and count it against you as income, which will result in reducing your aid eligibility. So now, not only do you have less to retire on when you need it, but you've shrunk your aid package, right? So that's what I mean by inadvertently costing you a lot of money by virtue of how you paid for college. If you can avoid using retirement resources, that's going to be preferable for you. Now, equity. If you think about it, a lot of families will look to equity as a resource item to help them pay for college. If you do own a home or have rental properties or a vacation home, for example, this might be something that you'll consider. My recommendation here is before you go tapping into your equity for college, talk to a professional first, because there are several different ways to go about doing it, some of which may inadvertently hurt your profile overall. Or cost you money in terms of paying for college. So whether that's us or someone else, just have that conversation before you make any sudden moves, right? But that is a resource item that some folks will consider. Now, what about private scholarships? Here's another way for families to defray their costs. The problem is that private scholarships only make up 4% of all of the financial aid in the whole system. They tend to be smaller denominations, so $250, $500, $1,000, maybe $2,500. And your child has to work really hard. It's very time-consuming and competitive, of course, to win these awards. So I only want you to manage your expectations here. Sometimes you hear from parents that say, well, we're just going to apply to a bunch of private scholarships and that's how we'll get through. It's not the silver lining, right? That you're hoping it might be. However, every dollar you earn in private scholarship ideally is one that you don't pull out of your own pocket. So my recommendation here is, if you're going to look for private scholarships, start close to home. Look at membership organizations or your employer, or if you have any particular affinity in terms of race, religion, ethnicity, whatever's going on in your family or with your student, look to organizations that cater to that group, because you'll find it's a smaller applicant pool. You might have a better shot at winning those awards. The last thing I'm going to say is that if need-based financial aid is something that you're really counting on, be careful with private scholarships, because there are some schools out there that have what's called a stacking policy, and that's where whatever monies your child brings to the table in private scholarships, they'll reduce the amount of your aid package because they figure, hey, that's money you don't need from us, right? So that can be a bit blindsiding. Just talk to the financial aid offices at the schools your kids are applying to if that applies to you. Moving on. There's one other way that folks can defray their college costs, and that's by looking at less expensive schools. Here I'm talking about community college. Whether or not community college is a great fit academically for your student is one question. In terms of the financial piece, I would just mention this, that 15% of kids who start in community college will have their undergraduate degree after 6 years. So that's a little bit sobering. It can absolutely be done, and my recommendation here is, if you're thinking going that route, know exactly where your child wants to transfer to and what their requirements are in terms of credits and courses. before your child ever steps foot on that community college campus. I can't tell you how many times we've spoken with families that are disappointed because their kids went to community college, went to their college of choice, their 4-year of choice, only to find that their credits didn't follow them and they had to retake courses. That's part of why it takes so much longer. It can be done. You just have to be on top of it. That's the advice. Okay, there are 2 types of financial aid in the system. Gift aid is what we love the most because that's free money that you don't have to pay back. So gift aid can be referred to in any number of ways. You might hear it, grants, scholarships, awards, housing offsets, other incentives. What this means is that generous schools typically that have some money to give will help make it more affordable for your family to attend their institution. Now they can do that based on your family's financial need. They can also do it based in large part on your child's accomplishments. That's called merit aid. So the way it works is these schools, they're competitive and they have a freshman class to fill. So they may incentivize your child to say yes to their offer of admission by offering a merit award along with their acceptance. Other ways of earning merit awards are things like high grades and scores, right? Academic prowess. Athletic scholarships fall under the merit category. Maybe your child's done some really amazing things outside of the classroom and has great leadership skills. But merit awards are a really great way for families to see financial aid that isn't necessarily tied to their financial need. Now, caveat here, highly selective colleges, Ivy League schools, they don't have merit aid. They don't offer it. They do a good job of meeting a family's financial need, but everyone who's admitted has merit, right, in their worldview. So just be aware of that. Okay, there is another type of financial aid in the system. It is called self-help. That includes the federal lending programs previously discussed and a program called Work Study. So if your child gets work study in their financial aid package, it means that they can get a job on campus and the federal government pays their wages as part of their financial aid package. Of course, if you don't get work study, your child can still get a job on campus or in the community to earn some extra money if that's something they're interested in doing. There are $175 billion in financial aid in the system every year, coming from federal and state governments, from those universities, those private universities and their endowments, as well as private organizations. So I had mentioned that private scholarships only make up 4% of the total aid in the system. You can see in this graphic that they're combined with employer grants, so that's why you see the orange slice of pie here at 7%. What I really want to draw your attention to is the institutional grants. They make up 1/3 of the total aid in the whole system. This is where you really want to focus because these are monies, again, that these generous private schools have to help make it more affordable, and they give that money out based on your family's financial need and or your child's merits. Now, federal loans make up more than 1/4 of the total financial aid in the system. I don't see that as great financial aid because, in fact, you have to pay those loans back with interest, of course. And then you have grants from the federal government, from the state governments, as well as some federal education tax benefits. These resources are primarily earmarked for lower income families. The bottom line is there is a lot of money in this system. And parents, it is incumbent upon you to make sure that you've got yourself positioned so that you qualify for as much as is fair, legitimate, legal, ethical, based on your particular financial circumstances. All right, I'm going to take a quick sip because I know I talk a lot. I hope this is helpful so far. All right, we're going to define some terms, some of which you may have heard of before, but I hope to go into a little more detail for you. FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. This is the financial aid application that you will encounter that the federal government uses to assess your ability to pay for college. You won't come in contact with it until your child is a senior in high school, and at that, it doesn't open until the 1st of October each year. So not to worry if you haven't seen it yet. The thing about the FAFSA is that the federal government will primarily use your tax return from what is referred to as your prior year to assess your financials. Now, what does that mean? So they're going to look at your taxes not from the last year, but from the year before that. So the financial decisions you make that are reflected on your tax return in what is going to be your prior year will really influence ultimately what you're expected to pay for college. So let me give you an example. For those of you who have sophomores right now, they're going to graduate high school in 2025. Guess which year is your base year for FAFSA? This one, of course, 2023. So everything you're doing this year that's going to be reflected on your tax return can either help you if you organize yourself accordingly, or potentially bite you in the rear end, right, if you haven't. Now, for those of you, for example, with juniors, they're going to graduate in 2024. Last year was your base year. So even though that year has come and gone, it is half of the equation. Of course, how you have your financial life organized is the other half. But it's a big deal, and FAFSA is important. It's not a terribly long or complicated application. It's fairly straightforward, but a lot does ride on it, so you want to get that process right. You do have to resubmit the FAFSA each year you have a child enrolled, and your base year is really important. They base everything else off of that, even if there are changes in years that follow. In terms of who qualifies, in order to qualify for FAFSA, either the child or one of their parents need to be either a U.S. citizen or a resident. Now, there are some gray areas there. If you're concerned about whether you qualify, I recommend that you go to the FAFSA website, .gov, FAFSA.gov, I believe it is, and you can look it up, and they get into more of the details. But in broad strokes, that's the case. And as far as what Smart Track can do for you and the resources that we provide, we are limited to being able to help those folks that do qualify for FAFSA. So that's just something to keep in mind, right? Okay. The last thing I want to talk about with regard to FAFSA is that we recommend that for most families, even if you don't expect to qualify for any need-based financial aid, it's a good idea to submit this application anyway. There are several reasons. For one example, we hear it every year that families move their kid into the dorms, they thought they were going to be okay, and then they find they have a shortfall, and now they are looking to borrow some money, and they want to know what their best options are. Well, they didn't submit the FAFSA, so they don't have those low interest rate parent and student loans available to them. Their only option is the private sector, which is clearly going to cost them a lot more. Some families like to take advantage of the low interest rate student loans that are offered, whether it's to give your kids some skin in the game in their own accountability in their own higher education. Maybe it's to help them build credit. So there are some good reasons to do it. There are also some private scholarships and some merit awards that require that you're at least in the system in order to qualify. So that's something to think about. Okay. All right. Another financial aid application that you may encounter is called the CSS profile. Now, this is used primarily by private colleges and universities, certainly not all of them, but many of them use this to assess your ability to pay. The way it works is all of the schools that subscribe to the profile have a laundry list of questions that they want to ask you. They roll all of those questions into this great big super form. It's administered by the College Board. Those are the folks that do the SAT and the AP exams. So it's not free. It will cost you $25 for the first school and $16 thereafter. The CSS profile, in all honesty, it's no fun. It's going to take a much deeper dive into your financial and personal life, certainly than the FAFSA. But even though it's pretty onerous to complete, the fact is, it is the key that can unlock tens of thousands of dollars for your family every year. So it's really worth doing. My recommendation here is that once you know where your child is going to apply to college, you need to go to the financial aid web pages of those schools and find out exactly what it is they require of you. Some schools only ask you for the FAFSA. Other schools also ask you for the CSS profile. And some will ask you for an application of their own creation altogether, right? Supplemental forms, etc. But you need to be on top of it and know exactly what they're asking for. Make sure the forms you upload reach their destination. Don't miss deadlines. All of this stuff really matters. Okay. The profile is going to look at 2 years of your taxes, by the way. So not only your prior like the FAFSA, but the more recent year, the previous year as well. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is super important. If you've wandered away or dozed off, maybe you're making dinner, I want you to refocus here, because what I'm about to talk about is really the crux of the matter. It's really important. So your expected family contribution, you may also hear it referred to as your student aid index. The terms are interchangeable now. What it means is, this is the minimum amount that you will be expected to pay out of pocket per student per year toward your college costs. Now, you may ask, how are they supposed to know how much we can afford? Well, by the time you submit all of this information through the FAFSA and or the profile, they have a pretty good idea of your financial life. So you may find that you have more than one EFC calculation. For example, the federal methodology that's using the FAFSA, they're going to take all that information, they're going to run it through a complicated series of formulas, and it's going to spit out a number. That's your federal expected family contribution. The institutional methodology that's using the profile, you may find you have more than one EFC calculation, and that's because the different schools assessing you may come to different conclusions from one another. So it's okay if you have more than one EFC calculation. But here's the kicker. I have never met a middle income or upper middle income family who received their EFC calculation and said, oh, well, that's about right. That's what we can afford to pay for college, so that's no problem. No, it's more like, are you kidding me? This is what they think we can afford to pay? This is ridiculous. Why is it so high? And the reason is this, that just by virtue of how you have your financial life organized, your income, your assets, your taxes, your property, everything, your business if you own one, everything that makes up your financial life can artificially inflate what you're expected to pay for college. And that's a problem. You want to find any red flags elevating those numbers and take steps to mitigate those issues, bringing those expected family contribution calculations down to their lowest natural, fair, legitimate level based on your circumstances. The reason that's so important has to do with what's next, which is your demonstrated need. And this is defined as the amount of financial aid that you're eligible for. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't always mean that's the amount of financial aid that you will receive. Most schools are not obligated to fully meet your financial need. However, some of the schools are going to do a better job meeting your need than others. Let me walk you through it. So let's say you're looking at a school with a cost of attendance of $50,000. You've been assessed that the minimum coming out of your own pocket is $30,000. That means you're showing demonstrated need of $20,000. So the lower your EFC, the higher your demonstrated need. And the greater your demonstrated need, especially if you're combining that with your child applying to a really good fit school that has money to give, wow, that could really result in a healthy financial aid package. In fact, it's how we define a generous school, is how do they meet your need? Do they meet a greater percentage of your demonstrated need with gift aid, money that you don't have to pay back? Or do they fill your need with a big package of loans? Not so generous, right? I think a lot of families are really surprised to find that some of these expensive private colleges and universities end up being sometimes as affordable, even more affordable, depending on your circumstances, than your flagship public state institution. So that's something to keep in. All right. Now, when we talk about college affordability, we're looking at the various elements of your financial profile for two purposes simultaneously. One is, hey, is there EFC inflation here? Not every family is going to have an inflated EFC, of course. Some folks are going to have a low EFC right off the bat. Others may have a really static financial life, right? Not a lot of moving parts. It is what it is. Other families will have a lot of stuff going on, and they may find that their EFCs are considerably inflated, and it may make sense to try to bring those down. Now, what's true for everyone, though, is what are your best strategies to cover your share of those costs? So we look at things like income, right? Assets, how they're organized, how much is there. Your tax planning is actually a really big piece of this puzzle. If you carry debt, what's the best way to try to leverage that? If you do have equity in real estate, your home or other property. If you own a business or you're self-employed, that's actually another really big piece of this puzzle. Weighing your opportunity costs, finding ways to open cash flow. Maybe there are grandparents looking to contribute. How will that impact these figures? If borrowing is part of your strategy, what are your best options there? And of course, overarching theme here, you got to protect your retirement, right? So that you don't end up being a burden to those kids later on. You know, we really want to do everything to help our kids achieve their dreams. We also just have to make sure that we're protecting ourselves at the same time, right? All right, so in addition to all of these factors, there are in fact 192 different strategies, different data points that are used to determine your EFC calculation, which means that there are so many strategies to help offset it, right? Most of them are based on financials, like what you see on my screen. Some of them also have to do with your family dynamic, right? Things like, is there a divorce in the family, or a non-custodial parent, or a single parent, or an adoptive parent, a guardian, for example. What about inheritance? Maybe you're anticipating or have recently received an inheritance or some other windfall that you're anticipating, maybe a settlement of some kind. Maybe you work in an industry where your earnings really fluctuate. You know, you have a really strong year followed by a lean year. You're not sure what's going to happen next. Whatever it is that's going on in your particular financial life, want to get an understanding of it with a view of paying for college so that you can really understand what steps you need to take. I talk about college funding planning. What does that even mean? Let me illustrate a few stories here for you to help wrap your head around it. In this particular case, this family had been saving money for college, which is great. We always recommend that you save for college as much as you can, as affordably as, or I should say, as flexibly as you can. In this particular case, this family's wealth advisor had recommended a particular kind of college savings vehicle for them when their kids were little. Unbeknownst to them, and certainly inadvertently, what they didn't know was that how they were saving for college was actually costing them $20,000 on their EFC calculations. By restructuring those savings, they were able to bring those EFCs down by that 20 grand and open up that demonstrated need, which, by the way, was filled with generous gift aid. With this particular family, they have a business. They got their daughter through college without trouble. When their son was ready to go, however, there was a gap in order for him to attend his choice school, and they were looking at borrowing money. We were able to help them looking at their tax strategies around their business to open up enough cash flow that they didn't end up having to borrow any money at all. They were happy about that. This woman is a social worker. Normally, she would qualify for pretty significant need-based financial aid based on her income alone. She inherited about $600,000, which was her nest egg. She really needed to rely on that money for the rest of her life. Had she just submitted her FAFSA that year, all bets are off. As it happened, we were able to help her safeguard those resources for her future, and in the process show an additional $30,000 in demonstrated need. As it happens, both of her kids ended up with really great aid packages that she found affordable. Okay, so the next question. What's the timing on this thing, right? So college funding planning is really a niche that happens in a short window, 9th, 10th, 11th grade, in the years when you're still 3-4 years from sending your child to college. Much before that, and your focus is just to save as much as you can, as flexibly as you can, and then come about 9th grade is when you can start being strategic about how to position those resources and help you determine your best options. It becomes a bit too late. By the time you have a rising senior, you've run out of runway. You've missed the opportunity in terms of how much time it takes to do this. So those of you with juniors right now, the next 6 months or so are your really last best hope to try to affect this before your kids are actually applying to college. 10th graders, because this is your base year, it's really important that you look at what's happening for you as early in the year as you can. Those of you with 9th graders, it is not too soon. This is actually when you're in the best position possible to look ahead and figure things out for yourself. Questions like, well, do I take that bonus? Do I make that expense? Those things that need a little advanced planning, it's really helpful. Okay, we have resources to help you with all of this. Your school has brought this program in so that you can get some support. At Prep, if you go to the college counseling pages within your parent portal, you'll see the banner for Smart Track. Click on it. At North Shore, you'll see the same thing. If you go into your parent portal, you'll find the Smart Track banner. I'm not sure where, Josh, you have it on the Audi site, but not to worry. The link that you need is in the chat, and I'm going to put it there again momentarily. In any case, you're going to end up at a landing page that looks like this, specific to your school. Here is where you can begin to create a parent account, not a student account, please, and one account per household. You should know that we don't sell, barter, trade, share your information with third parties. We also don't seek any sensitive information like social security numbers or account numbers, nothing like that. And we use military grade security. All of this just so that you can feel comfortable creating an account and using these resources. All right, so once you create your account, you're gonna log in. And what's critically important that you do, doesn't do you any good to create an account if you don't do the next step, and that is answer some basic questions. It will not take you more than 5 or 10 minutes tops. Please, you don't have to pull up your bank statement and your tax return to answer these questions. It's meant to give an overview of what's happening in your family's life. Not to worry, if you make a mistake, you can have a conversation and in real time augment that. But this gives us the opportunity to give you some feedback, right? Our advisors can't talk to you about what's going on in your financial life vis-a-vis college planning if you don't share anything with us, right? We have to have a bit of information. So do that. There are some free resources on the platform I want to draw your attention to. They're self-explanatory, so I'm not going to take time to walk you through them. But please, I encourage you to go down the rabbit hole, take advantage of this stuff. There's a really sophisticated EFC calculator. This 1040 tax strategies resource is really cool, even though it sounds kind of boring. It's really cool. So I encourage you, check this stuff out. All right, you're going to create your account. You're going to answer these super basic questions. And then you're going to have the opportunity to get on our schedule to have that college funding stress test. These calls are designed to run around 15 minutes or so. And we recommend that if you have a partner or a spouse that you join the call together. But this is really that important opportunity that this program provides is a third-party objective expert in this stuff can take a look at what's going on and give you some important feedback. They may say, hey, you know what? You're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing. Stay the course. They may say, ask your accountant X or Y. They may say, hey, you know what? You've got some issues here that you're going to want to address. Whatever it is that's going on, it's going to be super helpful, and I hope you'll take advantage of it and allow us to be of service to you. Okay. Is this even something that you need? Is this going to help you? Well, if you have some non-retirement assets, if you have some equity in your home or other real estate, if you own a business or you're self-employed, if you are receiving an inheritance or some other kind of windfall or anticipate one, or if you have been saving money for college in a UTMA, UGMA, or other type of custodial account, then yeah, these are the kinds of things that might cause you to overpay for college. These are some of those red flag issues that you're going to want to take a look at. So if that applies to you, just make sure that you get on our schedule, take that opportunity. Now, I had mentioned that we have some advanced resources that may or may not apply to you. Let me tell you briefly what they are, and then we'll move forward. We have what's called Smart Track Advisor, and that's where you meet one-on-one with a Smart Track college funding expert to develop and implement a comprehensive plan to pay for college for all of the kids in your family. Doesn't help you if you get your eldest through and you're still not sure what you're going to do about your second or third or fourth kid. Again, this is appropriate when you have a 9th, 10th, 11th grader. By the time you have a senior, it's too late. This is going to help you. You will also have as many meetings as are necessary based on your family's situation. So some folks get through this whole process in 2 or 3 meetings. Other families get through it in 4 or 5. It really just depends on the complexity of your financial life. Okay, so that's Advisor. And then Premium is our suite of 3 self-directed software tools that you can access from that platform. Navigator helps you identify schools that you're researching that are likely to be generous based on their historic generosity. We rank them green, yellow, red, up to 35 schools you can assess in that way. Smart Scholarships is a resource not for private scholarships. This is about merit aid. So we've created a database of all of the merit awards offered by all of the schools around the country so that once your child knows where they are applying, you can check it against this list and make sure you're not leaving any opportunities on the table. Check for eligibility. If there's a separate application for a particular award, you can do it directly from this tool. But this is a really good way to make sure you're maximizing your merit potential. Now, Smart Steps is a super helpful resource. It's a series of video tutorials, 65 different video tutorials and guides, as well as a 350 question bank, all around helping support you through the entirety of that 12th grade year when you are applying for college and financial aid. We cannot do it for you. In fact, legally, you are required to complete your FAFSA and your profile on your own. But we want to make sure that you have the answers that you need, all of the information at your fingertips, so that you can do it confidently and get it right. All right, so taken together, this entire package, we call it our bundle. It retails for $11.44, but through the high school initiative, we offer it to families that we can help for $497. That's all in. It's a one-time fee. It's not per year. And you use these resources throughout the entirety of your high school career. Just so you know, for some folks, one or the other might be pertinent. They are available a la carte. Some families with rising seniors, Advisor might not work out for them, but the premium software is something they want to have at their disposal. That's available for $247 as a standalone. Okay, so your next steps. You're going to follow your particular school's link to create your Smart Track account, and I'm just going to pop this in the chat one more time so you have it handy, those links specific for your school. Create your parent account, but don't stop there. Creating an account isn't going to get you anything. You need to just answer those questions on the assessment and get on our calendar for an evaluation, that stress test. That's what's really going to be helpful for you. Knowledge is power. It's really, really empowering to know, hey, I don't have to be so passive in this process. I can have some agency here. That's really important to reducing your level of stress around this issue. And so I really hope that we can be of service to you in that. Okay, don't go away because I want to launch a quick poll right now, and I'm going to ask that you provide your feedback. It's super helpful for all of us if I could ask you to do that. And then we can invite our counselors back on. Malika, here you are. Kristen, if you're still with us, you can join back. And let's see if you all have any comments to make, any thing to correct me on, anything you want to expand upon. Please, I welcome your input here. And we'll also take a look and see what kind of questions have been posed. Kristen, Malika, buddy?
I love the advice that you give, and for prep families, we do produce a guide to the scholarship, the private or the other scholarships that are out there, and we certainly are happy to support you in applying for those scholarships. But like Cindy said, they are not something that you should count on as being your primary source of funding for your college experience or for your child's college experience. We'll do everything we can to support you, but know that that's not realistically a way to make this affordable.
Yeah, and Becca, that's a really good point. And looking more strategically at the institutional aid that can be awarded and the types of colleges you can look at and be strategic about aid programs versus seeking out those private scholarships, which may or may not be attainable. And the only other thing I would want to echo is the timing of everything, the importance of deadlines, the importance of getting ahead of the process, simply because this is one area where missing deadlines or waiting to the last minute just doesn't help. And that's for some families who might have kids in ninth grade. It feels weird to start with this piece of the searching for college process, but it really is the one that requires the most advanced planning of any of the pieces, whether it's searching or applying or any of those things as well.
That's such a great point, Kristen. It's so true that families are usually their parents, I should say, are kind of caught flat-footed, because you think about college planning being about your student. And your students, they're working hard throughout high school, but it really doesn't come into focus for them until maybe 11th grade. But for parents, if you wait that long and you're not really paying attention and you start thinking about paying for college later, for all the reasons we've talked about, you kind of miss a lot of opportunities. So that's why we're trying to drive home this point that, hey, you got to think about this stuff earlier. Parents have to prepare too, and it takes more time. I do see that there is a question in the chat about the current interest rate for student loans, federal and private. I can't tell you because they're going to vary by lender. And with rising interest rates in this last year, they're on the rise. The way the federal interest rates work for undergraduate loans, student and parent loans, the federal government sets those rates and announces them the 1st of July every year for the next 12 months. So each year you take out a federal loan, you may have a series of different loans at different interest rates. During the pandemic, they were at record lows. Now with interest rates rising, they're a little higher. For this current year, the student loan rate is 4.99% and the parent loan rate is 7.54%, if my memory serves me. Again, private lenders, they may get you in the door by saying, hey, if you have great credit, you're going to be able to get a better rate. Likely you are, but it's typically really hard for the private sector to compete with the low rates that the federal government offers. Okay, I hope that's helpful. Anybody else have questions? Everything is clear as mud? I hope you're filling out the poll. Really appreciate that. All right. Well, is there one more question, or is that the one I already did? Okay. Got it. All right. Well, if what do I want to say? If you have questions about specific elements of your family's financial life, whatever situation's going on for you, the best place to ask those questions actually is when you have your college funding evaluation. You'll be one-on-one talking with a college funding expert, and that might be the right venue to get answers for your specific situation. So I encourage you to do that. Anything else? Oh yes, you can share the link again. We did that. Okay, great. All right, you guys. Well, if you don't have more questions, then we'll go ahead and say good evening. And thank you again for your time and your attention. I hope we can help you guys. Your counselors have brought this program in because they understand that it's kind of a big deal. And I hope that we're able to offer you at least some guidance and some support and some help with these big questions. You guys, thank you so much. Nice to see everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope you don't get a big storm tonight, Malika, and not too much snow, Kristen.
Have a good night.
Take care, everybody. Good night. Thanks so much.